Bienvenido a clase, soy profesor Olin. Esta noche vamos a hablar un poco de la formación de tres conceptos con los cuales estamos trabajando en capítulo 11, capítulo 12 y capítulo 13. Bueno, lección 11, 12, 13 in vistas. So yes, we are talking about the formation of the subjunctive form, which is chapters lección 13, 12 y 13, and the command formation, which is 11 and 12. So we're going to talk about each one of them. We'll talk about the usage a little bit of the mandatos, because they're pretty easy to use. You're just bossing people around, telling them what to do. We'll talk a little bit more about the use of the subjunctive in another forum. But right now we're just going to talk about the formation. And the book is going to tell you a certain way to form these. It's going to say to conjugate it to the third person usted, present tense usted form of all verbs, and then switch to the opposite vowel. And that's a good way of doing it for regular verbs. And you'll notice you see these regular verbs follow that pattern. But when you start to have verbs that have an irregular yo form, or there's a change in it in the yo form, well, then you have to do a lot of memorizing. If you follow this pattern, though, you will not have to memorize as much. So we're going to do this pattern so we don't, and I'll explain why. Step number one, we start off always with the infinitive. The infinitive is the base. It tells us everything we need to know about the verb before we begin to play with it. Hablar, to speak. Comer, to eat. Escribir, to write. Tocar, to touch or to play. Llegar, to arrive. Empezar, to begin. Pedir, to ask for or to order. As in a restaurant, you order your food. Pedir. Pides la comida en vez de decir ordenar. To order your food is pedir. Poner, to put or to place. Okay? We know a few other things about these verbs because of the infinitive. We know that this is an AR verb. We know that this is an ER verb. We know this is an IR verb. And we know, because we studied it, those are regular verbs. They're going to behave regularly. Okay, then we get to tocar, llegar, and empezar. They're also AR verbs. But we also see that there's a C, a G, and a Z there. And so this ending right here, this car, gar, and zar, that's going to do some funny things when we add the opposite vowel. So we're going to talk about those, but we need to know what happens there. Pedir, also empezar. It's a stem changer too. We need to know that. This E changes from an E to an IE. So we have to know that. This is a stem changer as well. This E changes from an E to an I. Poner, it has an irregular yo form. It goes to go. So it's one of our go verbs. So the infinitive should tell us everything here, at least if we have studied it and we look at the infinitive, we'll know the characteristics of that verb and what it does. So then the next step is really important. This is what's going to catch all of those irregularities, except for the verbs that are just completely irregular, like ir and ser and saber. We're going to have to memorize those. We'll talk about those in a minute. But the yo form of these verbs is the second step that we do. We conjugate them all to the yo form. Hablo, como, escribo, toco, llego, empiezo. Notice there's our stem change. Pido, there's our stem change. Pongo, there's our go verb. All the rest of these, it's just regular AR, ER, IR conjugation. The third step, easy, drop the O. We just drop the O off of all of them. Leave this little stem. So if you look, with the regular AR verbs, ER and IR verbs, the regular verbs, it's not going to look a whole lot different than the infinitive without the ending. Okay, that's fine. But, same thing with tocar y llegar. But here, when we get to the stem changer, there's a difference. So that's why we conjugate it to the O form. We're going to catch the stem change. We're going to catch the go change right there. And we're going to notice that this C and this G, they do funny things if we add the next step. So the next step is where we add the opposite vowel. Okay? What does that mean? Add the opposite vowel. Well, it simply means we add the opposite vowel that's in the usted form of the regular yo, or the regular present tense conjugation. Which means if it's an AR verb, the opposite vowel is an E. And if it's an ER-IR verb, the opposite vowel is an A. So we just plug that in. Hable, coma, escriba. If it was third person present usted form, third person singular usted form, habla. Here though, we switch the opposite vowel, hable. Your book is going to tell you to go from habla to hable, and that's a fine way to do that. But then it's going to tell you to memorize all of these. If you go for this yo form, when you get here, you're just going to add that, you're just going to add the verb ending on here. So we add the opposite vowel, hable, coma, escriba. We're going to talk about these in a second, pida and ponga. Opposite vowel added onto there. All these are AR verbs. Tocar, llegar, and empezar, AR verbs. So the opposite vowel is obviously going to be an E. But if I put an E on with that C, that changes the sound of the C. I want to say tocar, tocar, toco, to. Here it changes it to a S sound. I don't want that. I want it to say the hard K sound. So what I do is I have to change it from a C to a Q-U-E. Okay? I want to have the hard G sound. If I just put an E there, it would be yeje. I can't say yeje. Doesn't make any sense. It's not a verb, not a word. So I'm going to put a G-U-E. Okay? The same thing happens with empezar. We want to keep that S sound or the theta sound in Spain. And so the Z changes to C, and then we add the E. So add the opposite vowel. Cargar and zar, change to keep that hard sound. Not that difficult. Step 5, add the verb endings. This is where we get the subjunctive formation. Okay? Hable. Yo, es importante que yo hable. Es importante que tú hables. Es importante que usted hable. Yes, hear that? Yo, es importante que yo hable. Es importante que usted hable. The form of the yo form and the usted form is going to be exactly the same in the subjunctive conjugation. Okay? Tú is going to have our ending as normal. Nosotros is going to have our hemos ending or our amos ending, which depend on what it is. And then ustedes will have the end. So we conjugate it as we normally would. Es importante que yo hable. Es importante que tú hables. Es importante que nosotros hablemos. Es importante que vosotros habléis. We're not really going to present the vosotros form here in this video. We'll talk about another formats. We don't test on it, so we don't have to worry about it. But it's in the book if you want to look at it. You go to Spain, you'll hear it, and you'll figure it out. But we don't really need to worry about it for testing purposes. So, and then nosotros, of course, hable. So we would conjugate it completely. So I have a representative of each one of these conjugations. Hable, comas, escriba, toquemos, lleguen, empiecen, pidas, and pongan. Okay? So that's the subjunctive formation. You just conjugate it as you normally would, and you form the subjunctive. We'll talk about when the subjunctive is used, and when we need to use that later. It's a whole other video. Mandatos formales and mandatos informales. We're going to talk about mandatos formales first. Now, caveat here. This is important. If you have not gone into the course documents and the grammar files folder and looked at how to form the subjunctive document, that will be very helpful for you. We'll kind of go over all of this in more detail. It kind of talks about it a little bit more. It's also how to use the subjunctive. It's explained in there, and again we'll go over that. The other document that you need to go over, and that you have, if you have not done that, you need to go stop this video and go do it right now, is the PowerPoint presentation that is in there that I made. That is 3 rules of accentuation. You need to know what those rules are. So if you haven't done that, go now, stop the video, go watch that, and come back. Okay, now that you watch that video and you're back, we're going to talk about the mandatos formales, because we are going to put accent marks here when we add pronouns. We need to know why and where it goes. Okay, so mandatos formales. We're commanding usted, ustedes, and nosotros. We're bossing somebody that we have a formal relationship around with. And of course, we're going to say por favor because we're nice people and we want to do it. But sometimes you have to use the command form. Hable con su hermana, por favor. Speak with his sister, please. Coman. Comen hoy, por favor. Don't starve. Coman. Okay? Escriban, write. Toquen. When we have these commands, though, we're often going to command you to do something with something else. And so they loan themselves to the use of an object pronoun, or a reflexive pronoun sometimes, or a direct object or an indirect object pronoun, those object pronouns. So I'm going to tell you, speak to me, talk to me. Hábleme. And when I add a pronoun on, it has to attach to the end of the conjugation. Hábleme, hábleme, in the positive command form. This is when we're telling something to do something. Okay? Positive commands, we attach it directly to the conjugation. Hábleme. Now, because I've added this pronoun onto it, hable is where we want to keep that stress. If you go back here, hablar, hablar. This follows rule number 2, the infinitive, hablar. The stress falls there, but when I conjugate it, now the stress falls on the a. Hablo, hable. And I need to keep that stress there. So this hábleme is now, and as the rule says, if the verb ends in a vowel, an N, or an S, it falls naturally on the second to last syllable, and we don't mark it. However, this time it's the third to last syllable now where that stress is. That's why we don't have to mark anything here. Hable. It's the second to last syllable. Here, this that stressed A, where we need to stress, it's the third to last syllable because we've added a pronoun. So guess what? We have to mark it. Hábleme. Same thing with comen. Comen los. What is the los? Something masculine and plural. It's good to eat, like los tacos. Tacos are always good to eat. Cómelos. Eat them. Cómelos. Escríbenla. Escriben la carta a tu abuela. Write the letter to your grandmother. Escríbenla, or write something else that is feminine and singular. Tóquenlas. Play the sad songs on the guitar. Tóquenlas, por favor. Make me cry. Toque. That's where that toque is where I have to keep that stress. So I keep that vowel has to stay stressed. Okay. Tóquenlas. Llegue. Now, arrive. It doesn't lend itself, the context of in which we use llegar doesn't lend itself to pronoun use. So we're just going to leave it there. Llegue. Okay. Empiece. Begin it. Begin the exam. Empiézalo. Empiécelo. That's why we conjugate it to the yo form, because it tells us where that stress is going to fall. Empiezo. That eso is where we need to put it right there. That e stays the same. I've added another syllable. It's the third one back, so I have to mark it. Pídenlas. Okay. Piden las enchiladas. Order the enchiladas. Póngalos. Put the plates on the table. Póngalos en la mesa, por favor. Pongan los platos en la mesa. Póngalos ahí. Put them there. Okay. Now, if we want to negate it, we simply put a no in front of everything. Now we're telling him not to do something. No hable. Okay, don't speak to me. I put the pronoun before the conjugated verb after the no. No me hable. No los comen. No la escriben. No las toquen. No llegue. Again, no context to use a pronoun. No lo empiece. No las piden. No los pongan. And I don't have a nosotros command up here, but I easily could. It's pongamos. It's pidamos. Lleguemos, empecemos, toquemos, escriben. There are a couple of different things we do with the nosotros, especially with IR verbs. You can look at the document to do that. They're very rare that occurs. I'm not going to take the time to go into that. But the nosotros form is usually like, let's do something, okay? And we do with ir in the irregular form, we use that one a lot. Vámonos, vayámonos. It shortens down to vámonos. And so you've heard that. It's not just a slogan for a very successful past president. O vámonos, right? You saw that on bumper stickers. Vámonos, let's go. It means do something. That's why that was so popular, is because o vámonos means let's go, let's do it. And he won twice. So it was successful. All right. So those are our mandatos formales. We are commanding people with which we have a formal relationship. Normally it's going to be usted or ustedes, and sometimes nosotros, where we want to say let's do something. Okay, on to the mandatos informales. We're commanding someone with whom we have an informal relationship. And we're only going to really talk about the two form. Again, the vosotros form, we're not going to be tested on it. It is mentioned in those documents. You can look at that. And when you go to Spain, you'll hear it and do it, but we're not going to practice it. We're not going to be tested on it. So, mandatos informales. Okay, these positive commands that are in pink, there's something wrong with them. They're not obeying, they're not following the rule. We're going to talk about them in a second. What we're going to do is first we're going to go to these negative commands because they follow this pattern. They are going to follow this rule. Okay? And all of these. So, same thing. No hables, no me hables tú. No los comas, no la escribas, no las toques. The only thing that's changing is who we're commanding to do it here. Everything else stays the same. The S indicates that it's tú. No llegues tarde. Make sure you arrive on time. No llegues tarde. No lo empieces ahora. Don't begin it now. No las pidas. Las enchiladas. No las pidas. No son buenas ahí. Okay? Y no los pongas. No los pongas ahí, por favor. Don't put them there. And put them somewhere else. Okay. Negative commands, they follow the pattern. The positive informal commands, they don't. They're the rebellious 14-year-old surly teen who just wants to tell you that he's going to do his own thing, like I have at home right now. He's going to do his own thing. So this is what they're like. Okay? They don't want to participate in the vowel change. They don't even want to act like they're two. They want to act like they're an adult. So guess what? They don't add an S, and they don't participate in the vowel change. They're going to look just like the usted form. Habla, come, escribe, toca, llega, empieza. Notice what happens here with these cargar and zar verbs. It reverts back to the original verb. We don't have to have the QUE or the GUE or the C here because we're keeping that A there, and it just the sound stays with the ka. It keeps that hard sound. We don't have to change it to keep the hard sound. Toca, llega, empieza, pide, and then we get to pon. Okay. Pon it's a little bit different. These go verbs, again, they really don't obey the pattern. They're not going to keep that G. They're not even going to keep a vowel. They're just going to say pon, sal, as. D. And there's a list of those in your book and on the grammar pages that are in there, the grammar files. And so you can look at those and see which ones they are. You have to memorize those. But when we put a pronoun with them, ponlos, okay? Because it just is one syllable in this form, when we add the pronoun to it, we don't have to add an accent mark because now it is the second to last syllable where the stress is falling and it's obeying rule number 1. It ends in a vowel and a S, so it's going to naturally fall in the second to last syllable. We don't mark it. But with all the rest of these, it's the same rule. It is going to be hábleme or háblame, cómalas, escríbala. And you have to be careful that you pronounce that A or that A. And I didn't there, kind of on purpose, but I also kind of caught myself. It's an easy mistake to make. Háblame, cómelas, escríbela, tócalas, llega, empiézalo, pídelo, and ponlos. And again, put the accent mark on there and put the accent mark on the E. Empiézalo, pídelo, ponlos. It doesn't. Well, that is how you form the subjunctive commands in all of its forms. Now, really quickly, I'm just going to talk about the irregulars. They are in the book. They are on the grammar file. So go memorize those. I'm going to show you really quickly, though, with how those work to form the subjunctive. They're irregular. So we have a verb like ir. Okay, let me erase the pattern here. Well, I'm just going to erase everything. Okay, because I'm just going to write them up there. They don't follow the pattern. You just have to memorize them. Okay? Ir. You conjugate it to the yo form, it's voy. Well, it does keep the V, but it goes to this form, vaya. Vayas. Vaya. Vayamos. Vayáis. vayan. And so that's what it looks like in the subjunctive form. Okay, with the mandatos formales, we keep that same thing. Vayan, se, váyanse, get out of here. Váyanse, leave. Okay, no se vayan, don't leave. And then it is irregular in the to form as well. Ve, no te vayas. Ve, get out of here. Vete, no te vayas. So, look up the irregulars, memorize those. They don't follow this pattern. It's the same ones that we've always had. There's a few verbs. Like I say, with these go verbs, you have to memorize those informal forms. So there is some memorization, but a lot less if you follow the pattern. So follow the pattern, get it right every time. Do your best to be accurate. Practice, practice, practice. That's the only way you're going to learn these. Just boss somebody around to get these formal commands. We will talk about the subjunctive more in another video on how to use those. The document is there. I think what I'll do is I'll show you using the document and this kind of with the story that works. But this is how the formation of it works. And I don't want to make this too much longer, but I do want to just say that you have to practice. Hay que practicar. Es por eso que hay mucha tarea. Es por eso que tienes que practicar, tienes que hablar, tienes que esforzarse por hacerlo. You have to force yourself to do it so you can practice, so it becomes second nature, so you learn the process, so it becomes something that you know rather than something that you memorize. Hasta luego.